About a year ago, I started my journey to beat Persona 3, 4, and 5. I started with Persona 5 since that was the most accessible game for me at the time, and I fell in love with it. If you watched my Persona 3 video, you know that I bought Persona 3 and 4 around the same time thanks to Amazon still having new copies in stock. I started with 3 and figured I would play 4 after I beat it. Turns out that game is pretty hard and took me about 6 months to beat. About a week before I beat the game was the PC game show, so I tuned in and... it was meant to be. I beat Persona 3 that week and started right away on Persona 4.
Are you winning, son?
For this review, I will be comparing the game to Persona 3 and 5, so you may want to watch these videos on my channel first. Anyways, let me tell you why I think you should play Persona 4. For this video, I will be reviewing Persona 4 Golden, which is a bit different from Persona 4. I'll talk more about the differences towards my spin-off section of the video. This review will also not be affected by some of the issues I've had with the PC port, which I will also talk about later. One thing to note is that this game took me way less time to beat compared to the other games. Persona 5 took me around 80 hours to beat, and Persona 3 took me around 65 hours to beat, and this game only took me around 42 hours to beat. I don't have a problem with the game being shorter, but it is something to know if you want to play a Persona game, but you don't want to spend the 80 hours on it. Persona 4 didn't start development until Persona 3 was completely finished. If you've played both, you'll see that Persona 4 definitely borrowed a lot from Persona 3. A lot of the attack animations are the same, and the models only got a slight improvement, and the social link system remained mostly the same with a few new stats to upgrade. Atlus was aware of this and didn't want to make fans feel like they were playing the same game, so they focused a lot on making a unique and different story. This is where they came up with the idea of a murder mystery. Another big change in the game was the ability to control your party members. This change was made due to several complaints about how the AI-controlled party members were awful. I definitely think this was a necessary change since there's a whole meme about a character only casting a spell called Marin Karin instead of attacking the enemy.
Enemy is still alive. Slash attacks are out.
Similar to Persona 3, the game's main color is yellow. Personally, I like the blue look of Persona 3 better, but to each their own. Another interesting thing to note is that this game came out only 2 years after Persona 3, while Persona 5 took 8 years of development. Anyways, what is this game about? You play as this guy, whose canon name is Yu. No, not you, Yu. Your parents are overseas working, so you move in with your uncle in a small town called Inaba for a year. His daughter, named Nanako, also lives here. While in Inaba, you attend Yasogami High School and meet these people who are in your homeroom. There's Chie, an overly energetic kung fu movie lover, Yukiko, a busy teenager who's helping her family run the local inn that she'll soon be a manager of, and Yosuke, the biggest bro of them all who also moved from a big city to help his dad run a big store that just opened called Junes. Chie tells you about a rumor called the Midnight Channel. Apparently, if you look into your TV exactly at midnight, you will see someone. You don't really believe her, but you decide to try it tonight anyways. After school, you hear that there's been a murder and that students shouldn't leave alone. You walk back home with your new friends and watch the news. A girl is interviewed on the TV since she was the first one who found the body mentioned earlier. Later that night, you decide to try out the rumor Chie mentioned earlier. As the clock strikes midnight, you walk over and... You decide to tell the others tomorrow what happened. Obviously, the next day when you tell them, they don't believe you. You decide to go over to Junes after school to hang out, but before school's over, you hear that the girl who was in the interview yesterday was also murdered. Later at Junes, you accidentally fall into the TV display and enter a new world called the TV world. You meet a bear named Teddy who explains that he's been living here his whole life, and as of recently, someone's been throwing people into this world. He describes the two murder victims as people he saw get thrown in, and you and your friends decide to team up to find out who is the murderer. The TV world is dangerous though, and monsters called shadows roam all around. In order to defend them, you awaken to your persona. Shortly after, your friends also awaken their personas by accepting the side of themselves that they typically disregard. It sounds a bit confusing, but if you play the game, you'll realize it's not that bad. Just like in Persona 3 and 5, this game is split into two main sections. You have your everyday life and the TV world. While in your everyday life, you can do many things. You can explore the town of Inaba, visit shops, take part-time jobs, and hang out with social links. Out of all the Persona games I've played, I think this is my least favorite world to explore. It isn't bad, it does its job, but it just lacks the same feeling of Persona 3's Port Island and the detail of Persona 5's Tokyo. I guess that makes sense since it is a small town. You have your stores in Central Plaza, you have a shrine to visit, and you have your school. That's another thing I wasn't crazy about. Persona 3's Gekkoukan High was my favorite school. The layout was really unique and had a lot of life to it in my opinion. Persona 4's Yasogami High feels more similar to Persona 5's Shujin Academy. There are 3 floors, all pretty similar hallway layouts with a practice building you don't ever go into. Where this section of the game really shines is with its social links. Compared to Persona 3, it's a huge upgrade. There was maybe one social link that I wasn't crazy about, but other than that, I loved every social link. Similar to Persona 3, I think the best social links are from your party members, but that isn't me saying that the other ones were bad. Besides your party members, the two I can think of that really stood out to me were Nanako and Dojima's social link. Something Persona 4 Golden added that was also continued in Persona 5 Royal was locking the extra months those games added behind social links. In Persona 4, to do the new dungeons and play through the extra days, you need to max out Marie's social link and get Adachi's social link to rank 6 before a certain date. I'm not really a fan of this in either this game or Royal. Locking the true ending behind 2 social links that you aren't forced to do or even encouraged to do is really annoying and makes a blind playthrough potentially invalidated if you happen to not do the requirements. Even though I mean everything I said, I still think this game has the best everyday life section out of Persona 3, 4, and 5. I say this because the amount of activities you and your friends do. In Persona 3, there are hardly any activities you and your friends do. You visit a beach house, go on a school field trip, and a few other things. In Persona 5, you do a bit more. You visit certain parts of Tokyo with your friends, go to the beach, go to a buffet, go on a school trip, and a few other things. I would say in Persona 3, there was one of these activities once every 2 to 3 months in a game that was a year long. In Persona 5, it was about once a month in a game that takes a year. In Persona 4, these scripted activities happen every few weeks in a game that takes about a year. I was surprised about how many activities there were in this game, and it really made me enjoy all the party members that much more. Some of my favorites include going on a ski trip, staying at Yukiko's Inn for a night, going on a camping trip, and having a bake-off. One more thing that was brought over from Persona 3 FES were the quests. Instead of having Elizabeth tell you every quest, you get them from random NPCs that roam the world. This has definitely made the world seem more lively, but also made doing all the quests a lot more frustrating trying to find everyone. The other part of this game is in the TV world section. This is the dungeon crawling part of the game, and it's a weird mix of Persona 3 and Persona 5's dungeons. It has the individuality of Persona 5 dungeons with the random generation of Persona 3's Tartarus. Somehow, I found myself liking Tartarus more than these dungeons, but I still think Persona 5's pre-made dungeons were the best out of them all. Thankfully, Persona 4's dungeons only take about an hour each, so if you don't enjoy them, you won't be there for very long. Sometimes you'll have to look for clues to find more information about a person so you could find their dungeon. In order to do this, you'll need to ask specific people around town. The problem is, sometimes it is really confusing who you need to talk to, and sometimes you can only talk to who you need to on certain days of the week, so you never know if you're missing someone or if they're just not there on that day. I wish these sections were just never added and kind of feel like an artificial game lengthener. I do like the combat in this game. It takes Persona 3's already established turn-based combat and improves on it in every way. The all-out attacks are cooler, the navigation says more than just And Fusion has been improved with an added search bar showing you every persona that you can fuse at that time, and has a fusion calendar that boosts certain fusions on certain days. There are also skill cards, which are utilized by the new girl in Persona 4 Golden, whose name is Marie. Fusion cards are just skill cards that you can buy and you can put on any persona, which can lead to some really fun and good personas. Once again, Atlus excels at making a memorable and fantastic soundtrack. Shoji Meguro worked alongside Lotus Juice and Shihiko Hirata to make some true bangers. Here's some previews of my favorite songs, and if you want to skip this section of the video, go to the timestamp on the screen now. Due to the popularity of Persona 4, there was no way Atlus wouldn't capitalize on it. This is why there are 4 spin-offs of the game. The first spin-off was Persona 4 Arena, which is actually a really fun fighting game that puts the casts of Persona 3 and 4 against each other. I may do a separate video on covering every single Persona spin-off, so until then, just trust me that this is a really fun and complex fighting game. After that came Persona Q, which is a dungeon crawling game where the cast of Persona 3 and 4 team up to find a way to escape this alternate reality they were put in. This is the only spin-off I've yet to play, but it looks fun and I'll probably give it a try soon.
Right on target. Firing!
After that was Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, which is a sequel to Persona 4 Arena that has some nice quality of life changes and a much wider cast of characters to play. Then finally came the last Persona 4 spin-off, Persona 4 Dancing All Night. This was actually the first dancing game, and Persona 3 and 5 came after it. I definitely think this had the best songs out of them all, and there was a good bit more of content in this game. The one thing I wasn't impressed with was the story they tried to do. I'm way more of a fan of Persona 3 and 5's dancing lack of story, but instead had social links where you just hang out with the characters. Either way, it's still a really fun rhythm game that I liked a lot.
That went well.
I know I was harsh on this game in this video, but I really enjoyed it. If I had to rank every 3D Persona game, here's where I'd put them. Persona 5 had the best music and best gameplay and by far the best visuals. I think it's the one that holds up the most today. Persona 3 had the best story and really good music, but the gameplay holds it back quite a bit. Persona 4 definitely had the best social links out of all 3 games, but I found the story to be a bit disappointing. I just wasn't as invested in it as I was with Persona 3 or 5. That being said, if you're planning on playing every Persona game, I would recommend you start with Persona 3. Persona 3 is really different in terms of gameplay compared to Persona 4 or 5, so going back to play it may be hard for someone who just got into the franchise with either 4 or 5. Then, after you beat Persona 3, it doesn't really matter which one you play, so you could pick 4 or 5. Pick whichever one sounds more interesting to you. If you really like a murder mystery that has a more lighthearted story, go with 4. If you want a darker story and more polished gameplay, go with 5. Well, this concludes my analysis of every 3D Persona game. I'm not sure if I'll play Persona 1 and 2 since they are quite different, but I definitely want to make another video where I rank every 3D Persona spin-off game, since there were some that don't get enough credit. If you ended up playing any of these games due to my review, please let me know in the comment below. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like on it, it's the best way to let me know. Thanks so much for watching, I'm GamersIsCake, and I will see you in the next video.